Got it. Okay. So we are talking about thriving against diversity, i.e., don't let the bastards get you down. So first step, we're going to be grounding ourselves. And we're going to start by asking, what's on my side? And what is on your side are the three big ones. You've got the facts. You've got the vast majority of your community, and we will get into some of those numbers. And you've got the angels. Like, helping kids is just the right thing to do. And sometimes when you're facing the barrel of some really, really gnarly opposition, remembering why you do this and looking around and seeing who's with you is the best possible way to face it. Looking to see who's on your side, it at least lets me know that I'm doing things right when I'm like, oh yeah, I have tons of respect for these people. I'm so glad that these people are standing here. I am grounded in the fact that I'm doing right. So who is on your side? You've got teachers, you've got librarians, you've got educators. Pediatricians and medical professionals, I wanted to pay particular attention to because you might have noticed America is quite polarized at the moment. We don't actually trust a lot of people. There aren't a lot of categories of people that we universally trust anymore. Political consultants, hi, really, really low on that list. You know who's the top of that list? It's pediatricians. People trust them. Medical professionals in general, but specifically pediatricians. And pediatricians are for sex ed. They are for the kinds of lessons that you are providing. They are for inclusivity. So wherever possible, to remember that those folks are with you, and maybe you can use them as messengers, very, very helpful. Same with mental health experts. America understands that there is a mental health crisis among young people, and adding to it is not top of mind for the vast majority of parents. Former students are incredible messengers to talk about either the good things that they had in school or what really would have helped them have a better experience. Obviously, LGBTQ advocacy organizations. I would add places like Advocates for Youth, a Planned Parenthood, your coworkers and your extended partner network. If you want to scroll through these pages, every single name that you see on this Zoom is in that network. And then your own support circle. Don't discount how important your own friends and family are to helping you to do this work. And I've left out a very big category because I wanted to give it special attention, because it doesn't always feel that way. Parents are on your side. More than 60% of Americans oppose banning LGBTQ lessons in school. These are massive numbers. 83% do not support banning books that are critical of US history. 87% do not support banning books that discuss race. We don't see 80% in favor of clean water and good roads. Like, these are just not numbers that come up in politics. And you don't get to 87% with just blue states, with just Democrats, with just people who know gay people. You need rural states, you need red states, you need every single person on, like, every single part of the political spectrum in order to get to a number like 87%. And that is how we know how unpopular book bans are. The thing that I'm most excited about on this list, though, is this 64% number. This number comes from the Wall Street Journal, which is incredibly conservative. It is not a bastion of progressive polling at all. And what we have learned is that 64% of people believe transgender people should be protected from discrimination. Now, 64% of Americans don't understand what transgender people are. They don't get the gender identity question, and they still don't want trans people to be discriminated against. This number gives me a lot of hope. And a lot of polling is being done right now as we get to the parents' rights fight of it all, and we try to figure out like how that is resonating with the American public. I say we as the political class. And what we are finding over and over again in almost every poll that I've seen, parents' number one concern about education is bullying. It's not academic success, which is what I would have guessed. It's not gun violence prevention, which is probably what would have been my second guess. It's bullying. They hate it. They're worried about it. They're terrified for their kids' mental health. They recognize bullying as a problem. So I'm pretty sure if we took that 64% number, if we changed transgender people to transgender kids, and we changed protected from discrimination to protected from bullying, I'm going to guess that number would be right up there in the 80s. So I just want you to ground yourself in that. People don't necessarily understand these issues, but they believe that everybody should be treated with respect. They do not want kids to be bullied, regardless of who they are or how they identify. The vast majority of people that you speak to will agree with you on these issues. And that's an important part of grounding yourself, because I know when we think about having these conversations, we think about like shouting down the QAnoner or speaking louder than, Moms for Liberty at the school board. And that happens every now and then. But the vast majority of this work is talking to people who already agree with you. They either have heard something concerning, or they simply don't know that there's a fight in their own community. So this is going to help us. We're at this 80-90% support sexual health education in schools. That is huge. In 2018, the numbers were 89% supporting it in middle school and 98% supporting it in high school. 98%. Now, I didn't put that up because it's 2018, and since they've been attacking it nonstop for a few years, I'm going to guess those numbers are slightly out of the stratosphere. But recognize that there is consensus on this issue in the way that there is consensus on very, very little in this country. We don't actually need to change the hearts and minds of the 2% who don't like sex ed in high school. We don't actually need to change the hearts and minds of the 11% who don't want it in middle school. What we need to do is talk to the folks who already agree with us and have either heard the disinformation and they're confused and scared, which is of course the point, or they simply don't realize that sex ed is under attack. Yes, we can provide where these numbers are coming from. I just didn't want to clutter it with all of the lists, but it is in a blueprint for fighting back, and I will make sure that that is made available to all of you. I am so sorry about what is happening to your time. Okay, this is another part of grounding yourself. We're ourselves in the opposition too, just like we have to ground ourselves in our own community, because everything is not great. Those numbers make it sound like everything is great, but you all are here. So why is it not? Well, it's not a random uprising. It's not that this is all of a sudden coming up as an issue. It's a concerted effort. It's that some outside groups and politicians are willing to put kids at risk to score partisan points and gain political power. I know kids are more important than politics. I'm going to come back to that. Kids are more important than politics a lot. That's going to be one of the ways to keep a conversation productive. But it's weird. It's weird to realize that someone's trying to confuse you. Someone's trying to scare you. That is a strange place to be, and it's helpful to name it. Now, the reason why they're doing this is because they know those numbers that I just showed you just as well as I do. They can't win if they say what they're actually for. Nobody wants that agenda. Very, very few people want that agenda. And I can explain why that 11% and 2% matter seemingly in an outsized way in just a little bit. But they can't fight on an even playing field. They can't take this at a fair, good faith argument way, because frankly, it's just not popular. So let's talk about it. Anatomy of a disinformation campaign. The goal of the disinformation campaign is political power. It is holding office. Why you want to do that is really, I don't know what's in their hearts, but that is the goal of the disinformation campaign. It is to gain political power. The strategy that they're using is undermining public education. And when we recognize that that is the goal of what we are dealing with, then it makes sense that the teacher retention crisis is attached to the funding shortage, is attached to the protests around sex ed, is attached to the CRT protests, all of these fights are the same because they're all being waged by the same people. They all look the same because they're all funded by the same folks. It's all the same organizations. It's all the same. They just plug and play as the issues change. That's why the anti-mask people looked exactly like the anti-CRT people, look exactly like the book ban people, look exactly like the no trans bathrooms people. It's all the same. The tactics that they use are especially insidious. And this first one is probably the one that you are the most personally familiar with. They demoralize the workers. That is an actual tactic of the campaign. They are not necessarily trying to change anybody's mind. What they want to do is undermine public education. And the best way to do it is to make sure that the people who are trying to make it happen don't feel like doing it anymore. So recognizing that somebody is actually trying to demoralize you specifically, when it feels like it's personal, it is. They want you to stop doing your job. They also create chaos to obscure this strategy because this strategy is pretty awful. So it's a lot better when people think that there is some sort of ideological, reasoning behind things, and not that they're just trying to, waste the time in your day so that you can't do the important work that you need to do. And then, of course, they flood the zone so the truth doesn't stand out. They're loud about this. They explain this on their podcasts, in their own spaces, when they talk about how to undermine public education. Flood the zone is a phrase that you're going to hear a lot. So that's why when one issue doesn't seem to be working, they jump straight to the next one. It's not really about winning any individual argument or issue. It's about confusing the entire space. Let's talk about demoralizing the workers, because this is what you all are having to deal with. So some of the ways that they do that: endless complaints, harassment and threats, which hopefully you're not dealing with, but I know lots of folks do. FOIA requests, endless FOIA requests, where they want to know all of the lesson plans. They want everything in the history. This is a time waster. That's what they are attempting to do here. Vague laws are intended to demoralize the workers. I was talking to somebody in Arkansas the other day, where, of course, the governor, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, has passed a law basically saying that teaching CRT and indoctrination is not allowed in schools. Well, nobody in elementary school or middle school or high school is teaching CRT, but the teachers all know that she doesn't really mean CRT. She means lessons about race, but the law says CRT. So if I'm going to teach about Reformation and Restoration and slavery in America, am I running afoul of the law? I think I probably am, but it doesn't specifically say that. So then the teacher themselves has to self-police. So the vague laws are actually, sometimes you're inclined to think they just don't know what they're talking about. The vague laws are on purpose, and it's to make it harder for you to do your job. And then, of course, one of the worst things is doxing, where they put your personal information online. If you have experienced anything else, throw it in the chat. I think it's nice to have people know that they're not alone in this. While it is personal, it is also not about you. So I'm sure that you all have experiences that lots and lots of other people on this call can amen to. Okay, why are we demoralizing the workers? Because they are effective. Because they can't win with a good faith argument. They cannot support what they are saying with facts. And if the truth is heard, it is believed, because public education is extremely popular. So the bottom line is, the only way they win is if they make you give up, is if they make you stop telling the truth. That's it. You are that powerful. So I know it's a real trick of the brain, but when somebody's coming after you, recognize that's because you're incredibly powerful and they can't win with you doing your job. It's really just that simple. So let's talk about how we take care of ourselves while we deal with this. I want to talk about self-care and community care. We hear a lot about self-care. We don't really hear enough about community care, I think. Self-care is actions you take to meet your own needs. And community care is actions that your group takes to take care of each other. So I want you to think about both of those things as you have a challenging day. Use your support system. When do you need community care? What kinds of actions do you want taken? Think about it. You deserve this. Who can you call on to care for you in these ways? Which are the friends that will let you vent? Which are the friends that will distract you if that's what you need? Who are the people who will give you a hug and say, I'm so sorry that you had to go through this today? Who will leave you alone and let you just wallow in your own little bubble for a couple of hours and read a trashy novel or have a large glass of wine? Like, what do you specifically need? Who can provide it for you? And then recognize that you deserve it and take it. That is part of doing this work, is caring for yourselves. What is restorative to you? These are a few that I like a ritual to get past a tough day, like recognizing that I have had a day that is not appropriate. I should not have had to deal with what I had to deal with today. The things that I'm seeing in the chat are examples of all of those. You should not have had to deal with that. And if you have had to, then you get a cookie. You get the trash TV. You get the beautiful hike on the weekend. You get to sleep in. Decide what you need and take it. Reconnecting with your purpose is a great one. Having a sense of purpose is one of the best ways that humans get through adversity. So knowing why you do this, the young people that you do it for, that's going to help. I'm a big fan of screaming it out. Cars are excellent for this if you live in cities. And then, of course, my favorite, which is a hot bath and a large wine. I'm sure that you all have lots of other ideas, but take some time and think about it and recognize that this matters. It really does. Okay. Dealing with disinformation. Let's do a little language setup first. Disinformation is information a person knows is false, but repeats anyway. Misinformation is information that is false, but the person doesn't know it and they pass it along. So the disinformation folks, you're never going to waste your time talking to them. The folks that know better, but keep saying it, there are code words that they use that usually let you know that they're not going to come around. They're not going to listen to facts. They don't really care. Words like rumors, words like woke, that usually lets you know that you are dealing with somebody who doesn't really want to hear the facts. They want to waste your time. They want to annoy you. They want to confuse the situation. Misinformation is, the email that your aunt sends saying, oh no, have you heard about this terrible thing? Your aunt is not a disinformation agent. She has heard something and she is confused and she has forwarded it. So most of the people that you're going to talk to who have concerns have heard disinformation and they have believed it. They are not the bad guys. They are confused and scared, which is the point of a disinformation campaign. So back to that, why is the 11% and 2% so overpowerful? The metaphor that I use is a stadium. If everybody is cheering in a stadium and one section is booing, and I walk in, it's very easy to tell what's happening. Stadium of happy people, these people are unhappy, I've got it. Now, if we hand the unhappy people a megaphone and then we spread them out throughout the stadium, if I walk into it, I can't tell what's happening. It just sounds like chaos. So if you think about their financial resources as the megaphone and their organizational tactics as their ability to spread around, this is why the people who are yelling at your school board meetings are often bussed in from other counties. They are spreading themselves around the stadium. This image is from Worcester, Massachusetts. It was the lawn signs of a school board candidate who decided to make her entire campaign about opting out of pornographic sex education. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands for who recognizes this logo. If you don't, congratulations, you have lived a good life. If you do, it's the Pornhub logo. So she decided to put the Pornhub logo around Worcester, Massachusetts in the lawns of her neighbors. So lots of people had to explain stuff. And she made it the entire focus of her campaign. And I use this because it's indicative of how disinfo shows up, but also because she lost quite badly. And she lost because the community came together, faith leaders, pediatricians, mental health experts, parents, former students, everybody on that first list. And they made darn sure that everybody knew how important sex ed was and that it was under attack. She came in 8th out of 8, despite having vast majority of money. So there's a lot of hope here. Okay, so where is the disinfo showing up? This is a really important question to ask because it kind of feels like stadium metaphor, right? It feels like it's coming from all sides. It's not. Get specific. Where is it showing up? Is it on a Facebook page? I feel like everybody has that one Facebook page that's like run by the former mayor and he's super disgruntled. Like that, is it on that one Facebook page? Is it on a right-wing blog? Is it staying within its own media circles? In that case, we're not going to amplify or respond to it. They live in a little ecosystem that is sort of all their own. If somebody, I worked with a school district once where Tucker Carlson had literally named them on one Friday night, named their school district, I think even named a teacher. And it was horrifying. It was scary. And the question was, what do we do about it? And the answer was, until this second bullet is reached, we're not going to do anything. The only time we're going to respond is if that disinformation is likely to make it to the people who matter to you. Are parents hearing it? Are school board administrators here, or school board members hearing it? Administration. If local media is calling you, if it's reached, I mean, I think of community spread. If you have hit community spread with the disinformation, then we need to respond. But if it's just over there and we bring it over here, what we have done is ensure that way more people are going to hear about it than would have otherwise. So ask where it's happening. It is deeply troubling when anybody is lying about you anywhere. But if it's happening in that space and it's not reaching the people who you need, don't help it along. You have to remember the goal of the disinformation campaign might not be altering public perception at all. It might just be to mess up your day. It is that simple. Thank you, Lakara. That's a good one. I'll come back to that. So we're going to build our message, because whether or not we respond, we want to know how we would respond. And we can do this right now. If there's somebody in this room who has not experienced a disinformation attack, this is the most important thing you can do right now. And if you have, you know how important it is. So who do you need to communicate with? Who is your audience going to be? Is it parents that are concerned because there's a television commercial that they're seeing? Is it school board members that are concerned because maybe an extremist has been elected into their midst? So think about the audience. Think about what you want people to know in advance, proactively, about the sex ed curriculum that you're supporting. The 4 things that we have found to be most effective, and I wish I could just write talking points and like send them to everybody, but every district is different, every curriculum is different. So we have categories instead. And you all know what you are doing to reach each one of these categories. Write it out in your own fact sheet. And this blueprint that I mentioned before actually walks you through this process. But age-appropriate care, wildly important. One of the first things that they tend to say, or one of the big things about disinformation, this disinformation is saying that like something that may be elective for 16 and 17-year-olds is being shown to kindergartners. So what you want to do is start out by talking about how age-appropriate your sex ed curriculum is. Pediatricians probably agree. Parental involvement and transparency. A big part of what they're saying is that, schools are doing stuff behind people's back. So with our proactive talking points, we're going to lean in to how transparent this curriculum is, how much we encourage parental involvement. I mean, most of these curriculum are available on the web, on a website where people can see every single word of every single lesson and opt out of anything individually, questions included. This is like among the most transparent things that happen in any school. So write down, what are you doing for parental involvement? Are there worksheets that go home? Are you encouraging conversations with parents? What are you doing to get the family involved? The third one is efficacy. What are the benefits of sex ed? And we all know what they are. We wouldn't be working here if they didn't, but don't forget about why we do this in the first place. It keeps kids safe. It sets them up with self-esteem. It sets them up for success. Healthy relationships and friendships and boundaries and consent, all of the great, and then of course, lower STIs and pregnancy rates. The old reasons that we used to cite for why sex ed is good are still relevant. And then the fourth one is inclusivity. Inclusivity is a positive. And if I made a separate slide for this, I'm going to repeat myself, but inclusivity is something you want to lean into. Every single school has kids who are LGBTQ. Every single school in America, every public school, every private school, every Catholic school, every charter school, every school in the world, I would venture to say, has queer kids. They deserve an education that speaks to them. That really ought to be enough. But for some folks, it's not. So for those folks, I posit that we have lots of medical studies that say kids are safer, all kids are safer in an environment that treats all kids with respect. So your straight kid is less likely to be bullied, remember how important bullying is, in a school that treats the gay kids with respect. So you support an inclusive curriculum because you care about kids' safety. You care about protections from bullying and discrimination. You want kids to have a good education. It's okay to lean into that. You are on the right side here. So work up your own frequently asked questions sheet, if that is a term of industry. And think about these 4 bullets and what are you doing? Like, what does your curriculum do? What does your school district do to support each one? Then you have it on hand. That way, every time you speak publicly, you know what you want to say, and you don't get caught having to talk about what they want you to talk about. So know where you want to say the thing to. We talked about this a little bit, but you want to refute the disinformation only where it exists. So if it's on, if you have a Facebook page saying that, inappropriate material is being shown to 2nd graders, create a graphic about how age-appropriate sex ed is. Don't mention what they're saying. Just say, check out our age-appropriate sex ed curriculum here, link, and leave it on that page. If it's at school board meetings, have messengers from that list of folks, the pediatricians, the mental health professionals, the LGBTQ organizations, send messengers to those school board meetings. If it's in the paper, somebody's written an op-ed that's just frankly not true, write a letter to the editor. Meet the disinformation where it is. Don't fall for the stadium. Don't think it's coming from everywhere. Figure out where it's coming from and meet it there. Okay, now we're actually going to get into how to have the conversation. We're going to learn how to keep this productive. And there are really 3 rules. Don't debate. We'll get into that. Meet their concern. Remember, most of these people have heard disinfo. They are scared and confused. They have genuine concerns you probably share. So we'll meet them, and then we're going to find common ground. Because remember, we're in this 80% of people are inclined, at least, without the disinfo campaign, to agree with you. Common ground can be found there. And if it can't, I want you to protect your own mental space. And I want you to leave that conversation as quickly as possible, because we don't need the 2%. We don't need the 11%. It's okay to let them go. The people who are going to take care of those people are their family, their sons and daughters, their nieces and nephews, and it's very long work. It's in some cases it's a lifetime of work to deprogram, to get them to understand what the reality of people's situation is. It doesn't have to be your job. Okay, so this is the tough one. This is the toughest thing that's in my entire slideshow, because we really, really want to do it, but don't repeat the disinformation. So if somebody says, is sex ed pornographic? You want to say, sex ed is not pornographic, and explain why it's not pornographic. While that's true, it's actually counterproductive for 2 reasons. 1, if I keep saying X isn't Y, even if X is not Y, if I keep saying X isn't Y, the way the brain works, X and Y wind up in the same folder. It's not you don't necessarily start to believe that X is Y, but you know that they're adjacent to each other at least. There's something that connects them. And if you're not somebody who is paying tons and tons of attention, you might lose the isn't. You might just put X and Y in the same category and leave it there. The second reason is even more insidious, which is they want you to debate them, because then you don't say all of those great facts you just developed: the age appropriate, the transparent, the inclusive, the effective. You don't say that, because all you're doing is debating whether or not it's porn. Like, you all know the meme of the white guy sitting at the table with the sign in front that says, like, women shouldn't drive cars, change my mind. And you're not going to have a productive conversation if you sit down with that guy. He wants to waste your time. So if you have 5 minutes to have a conversation with somebody and you spend that 5 minutes debating whether or not sex ed is porn, they've won. Even if no minds have been changed, even if nobody believes what they're saying, you have spent 5 minutes not saying sex ed is effective, it keeps kids safe, it's age appropriate, it's transparent, and inclusivity is good for everybody. You haven't said any of that. All you've done is debate what they want you to debate. And remembering that they're not really in it to change hearts and minds. And as soon as the porn charge stops working, they'll say something else. Remembering that is really helpful. You want to own the conversation, and not repeating the disinformation is one of the best ways to do it. Okay, so easier in theory than in practice, right? So this is what it actually looks like. I call this the power of no. I heard there was porn in classrooms. No, all videos are age appropriate. That's it. No, that's not true. Actually, it's the opposite. There's a lot of bad information out there. I don't think that's right. There are a million ways to say no. Knock down the disinformation. But that's the only breath you're going to give to it. After that, You're going to say what you want to say, which is Amaze videos are age appropriate. Those are points you want to make. And then you're going to talk about how great they are for kids. What are the benefits? So the no takes care of it. And then you're off to the races on the things you actually need people to know. We're not going to ignore the disinformation. It is a weird feeling to be lied to. And they're pretty insidious about how they do it. It's coming up in Google searches, which people feel is like sacrosanct. It's strange that somebody is attempting to deceive you as an adult. It's weird. So go ahead and say, there's a lot of bad info out there. People know that about the internet. That feels true and right. It is true and right. Go ahead and validate that feeling. Yeah, I think it's always useful to ask questions. Have you watched the videos? What's your concern? Getting to that is going to help you find that common ground. Absolutely. And if you need to explain further what's going on, and you feel it's appropriate in the conversation, the truth is some outside groups and politicians are heavily invested in confusing and scaring you, because they're in favor of book bans and nobody wants that. So we know that not having accurate information about their own bodies makes kids vulnerable to bullying. And we think our kids are more important than politics. We think our kids are more important than politics is going to be one of the ways that you find common ground with just about anybody, because almost everybody is going to agree with you on that. And if they don't, again, off to the ice floe, we don't need to talk to them. So remember that. We think our kids are more important than politics. We're going to meet their concern, because these are people who are concerned. They are confused and scared for the most part. And as soon as you think you're dealing with the opposition, it's okay to end the conversation as quickly and politely as possible. But you are probably dealing with somebody of good faith who has seen something deeply concerning, because the disinformation is meant to frighten you. So if somebody comes to you, and I keep going back to the porn one because I hate repeating the disinformation, and I kind of have to for this, for my presentation. So I'm just picking that one to harp on it. If somebody's coming to you with that, it's probably because they're worried. They want their kids to have age-appropriate material. Well, you share that concern. So if somebody's coming to you because they're worried about, they want their kids to be able to, they don't want their kids doing stuff behind their back. Well, you want your kids to talk to you about these issues too. You all want kids to feel safe at school. You probably both want kids to make healthy decisions. So figure out where the fear is coming from and then meet that genuine concern, because 9 times out of 10, you share it. Now, if the concern is, I don't want kids to learn that gay people exist because I think that's wrong, you don't share that concern. And it is okay to lean into inclusivity. I'm sorry that you feel that way. The truth is, every single school has LGBTQ kids. They deserve an education. But let me tell you, your straight kid is actually less likely to be bullied in a school that treats gay kids with respect. So it benefits everybody, and that's why we do it. But 9 times out of 10, the concern is coming from a place that you share. So find it and meet it, validate it. Don't start by telling people that they're wrong. Start by understanding why they feel the way that they do. And then here's a little tricky part, because once you say, you care about, you're worried that your kids are seeing age-appropriate material, I'm worried that my kids are seeing age-appropriate material. Now, what you want to do at that point is go, but what you've heard is wrong. We're going to, we all know if you say but, you negate everything that came before it. Anybody who's ever heard, I love you, but knows what's coming next, and it's not going to make you feel loved. So what we're going to do is change but to that's why. We all want our kids to have age-appropriate material. That's why I support the videos in our schools that have been vetted and approved. We all want our kids to talk to us about these issues. That's why I support the sex ed curriculum that includes so many opportunities for discussions at home. So you're going to meet their concern. And then the fact that you share their concern is actually the reason why you support sex ed. So, practice it a little bit. Think of it. It's going to come more naturally to you than you realize, because it's the truth. So let's talk about how we can help schools help kids, different things that we can offer to them, legal help, assistance with these FOIAs, talking points. If you draft based on those 4 points and you want to disseminate them because our schools are too busy to do this kind of stuff and they shouldn't have to anyway. Finding expert validators. Most schools aren't thinking about building community coalitions. They're not like, I need to have a pediatrician on call. I need to have a faith leader on call. But if you're thinking that way, when the school gets hit with a disinformation attack, if it's coming from a moral, religious place, you can say, hey, look, I have a faith leader who has come to his or her support through his faith. And I would love that person to write the letter to the editor in response, or to have that conversation with that parent. Graphic design, it's super fun. If you have somebody who does it, help create those little graphics that we can leave on the Facebook page of the irate former mayor. And of course, a little therapy, because you are part of community care. So if you are not on the immediate front lines, let that person lean on you a little bit. You can lean on the person who's a little bit farther back from you, until finally that person is leaning on their, long-suffering spouse, and they know exactly what to do with it. And if you have other ideas, go ahead and put them in the chat. And now I am going to stop sharing so that we can do a little Q&A. Are we back? We're back. Excellent. All right. What have I missed in the chat? I was trying to get through. Lakara?
Hi, I'm here with you. And I have 2 questions that came in the chat. And then I also want to offer space for those to still ask questions. We still have some time left. So just one of the question was, as a teacher and a medical professional, I am still amazed at how few people are swayed by facts. What are better ways to present facts or appeal to people's emotions to help them accept and embrace health education? Wow, that's really great question.
And a great premise. People are there's actually a secret other reason why I don't put the sources in with the 87%, 85%. It's because I don't want you to cite them. If somebody is saying, I don't believe that we should be teaching LGBTQ lessons in school, and you say, yeah, well, 65% of Americans disagree with you, you're not winning that argument. So I gave you those numbers so that you all could ground yourself in how right you are and how many people agree with you. So premise of the question, absolutely correct. Facts are difficult. That's why we're going to start by meeting the concern. And then the best thing to do is tell personal stories. Everybody has a sex ed story. Every single human, either you had good sex ed, or more likely, you probably had no sex ed or terrible sex ed. I had a gym teacher slap a maxi pad on his forehead to say that women should have to go around like that when they had their period because they were too nuts. I was born in 1981. So I'm assuming things are slightly better in some places, but that's my sex ed story. So share your stories, and share the stories about kids being bullied. Finding out the mental health statistics, the suicide statistics among trans kids, that is incredibly powerful stuff. But not when you're giving it in sort of statistics. You want to talk about real kids. You want to talk about the stories that you know. A lot of times we're dealing with this forced outing thing that's happening sort of across the country. I was just dealing with the New Jersey school district that was going through it. And that's a tough one, but because it involves kids not being safe at home, and nobody really likes to think about that. But if you get personal with it, everybody knows one of those kids who does not have the home life that you have tried to create for your own kids. Everybody knows one of those kids. You probably feed them a couple times a week. They probably stay over a little too long in the summer. You know them. That kind of meeting is so much more important than facts. Our kids are more important than politics. While it's a fact, is an emotional value statement. So wherever you can, that's where you ground yourself in the facts, and then lead with your emotions.
I love that. I love that response, because that's really important. Framing the work that we do is telling personal stories. I know we talk about this all the time, but personal stories go such a long way and really are grounded in the foundation of the advocacy, right? And that's storytelling. So I love that. Thanks, Jess. Another question came in the chat earlier, and it is, what about when you work for people who push or allow mis and disinformation and you aren't allowed to fight back?
So hard. And It's similar. I was just reading this other question about what if you're not allowed to talk about LGBTQ issues in schools? What happens when you're actually not allowed to do the work that I'm telling you to do? It's really tough. This is where advocacy needs to happen in other spaces. If you're dealing with laws, you want to talk to your advocates for youth. You want to talk to your Planned Parenthoods. You want to talk to your Glissons. You want to see what's happening to either change those laws or those lawmakers. If it's your boss, that's really, really tough. That is actually one of the toughest positions to be in. So if it's somebody like, and now we need to figure out, is the boss a disinformation agent or is the boss misinformed? If the boss is misinformed, maybe you can very gently over the course, like you're not going to come in, guns blazing saying you're wrong, obviously, but maybe over the course of a while, you can help introduce some facts into your conversations with that boss. If that boss is dyed-in-the-wool disinfo, all you can do is think about how to get what the kids need to the kids. Try to take your ego out of it, and I mean that as gently as possible. Like try to remove the idea of how you should be doing your job and think about what the actual goal is. And if the goal is getting, materials to the kids, maybe that's done in a different way. Maybe it's not you that gives it to them. Maybe there's, and lean on people. Like call the organizations in your network and ask them what they're doing. It doesn't have to be you that takes on everything. And if you are the employee of somebody who won't allow you to do that, maybe you wind up making a lot more calls to that community coalition. Maybe that's how you agitate for change. And it's not necessarily you having the conversations. It's you encouraging other people to have the conversations.
No, that's such a great point. And I see another question that just came in the chat too, Jess, and I want to get that to a moment. But when we're thinking about, so for the person that shared their story, thank you for your honesty and like your vulnerability and sharing, because that's a really, really tough position to be in. Yeah. But I'm also thinking through, okay, so with the maze, as we know, we have a lot of different educators who communicate with us on a several basis, talking about how they're restricted, but they still want to provide a maze as a source, advocates for youth as a source, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of it is based in that disinformation. So my question is, I don't want to say how do you go around it, but what advice in your experience and in your lane would you suggest to an educator to still advocate for a maze and other important and accurate sex education, but then also staying within being respectful of their own jobs and livelihood too?
Yeah, I would figure out what exactly the obstacles are. If the obstacles are your school board, make sure that you have folks going to school board meetings. Load up the people in your community who agree with you and care about this. Talk to them about a maze. They probably don't know what a maze is. They know what sex ed is and they care about but they don't know how to do the direct advocacy that needs to happen in those cases. So talk to other people about how to show up. It's one of the best things that you can do. If it's your own superintendent, that's tough. Again, I would call on your amazes. I would call on your Planned Parenthoods. I would call on your advocates for youth. I would ask for best practices. In some cases, you just want to be as kind as possible as you can to kids and answer the questions that you can and ride it out. We can't win every fight. And in some cases, and I can explain why the 2% and the 11% have way more legislative power than they ought to too, but we don't have time for a lesson on gerrymandering and the Electoral College and the rest of it. But you all know why and how these extremists get elected, even though the majority of people don't support them. So think about who or what exactly is standing in your way, and then who or what can reach them, and see if you can be a catalyst for making that messenger reach that person. And it's probably not you.
Yeah, such great advice. Thank you so much for that, Jess. The question earlier that I wanted to come back to is there a point in which you should close a conversation going nowhere productive? And then what is a way to close that conversation without someone walking away thinking they won?
Okay, one, I don't care what they think. It's okay. What matters is your mental headspace. You want to walk away feeling like you can keep doing your work. So there are I'm so sorry that you feel that way, but my door is open. I'm happy to continue this conversation another time. Thank you for your concern. I understand where it's coming from. We have disagreements, but I love to hear from you, and thank you for the courage to talk to me. Like, thanking them, being nice and think about it as being petty. Like, if you're worried about them thinking that they won, be nice. smile. Thank them for their honesty. Thank them for their bravery in having this uncomfortable conversation with you. If you don't crack, they haven't won. If you don't show that this is frustrating to you and your day is a little bit off kilter because of it, they haven't won. They know they're not actually trying to change your mind about anything. So all they're trying to do is sort of get you off the path that you wanted to be on that day. So they don't win if you don't care.
Love that. Great answer. Thank you so much. And we have time for maybe one or two more questions, folks. So I do want to read this one to you, Jess, about parents and politicians. There we go. Parents and politicians use power to intimidate. Teachers in our society are not considered powerful, and this is the further impact by gender, age, experience of the teacher, coupled with a little financial power as well. Do you have strategies for teachers to regain power? Oof,
that's a big one. That's a huge one. I think one, organize, talk to your fellow teachers. There's always more power in numbers. And two, wherever you can, in an appropriate way for your job, speak out. You know, if you're able to show up at meetings, if you're able to be at school drop-off or wherever the disinfo is happening, do so and talk to people. One of the ways, one of the reasons why they're making it so tough for teachers is because, those trusted categories. Teachers are actually not that far down that list. People like teachers. They really do. They like school librarians a little bit more. But talk to your colleagues. Make sure that you're not alone in this. The other side is organizing. They're talking all the time. And somebody has a great way to end a conversation with a parent. Somebody in your school has probably figured out exactly how to deal with the problem that you are currently dealing with. And if we don't talk to each other about it, we're never going to know. If we can show up en masse to a school board meeting, that shows power. And it really draws a contrast with the other side because you actually live in the district. You actually work in the school. The people who are showing up on the other side are probably bussed in from somewhere else. So maintaining your cool when the other side is screaming, showing up in numbers, and just not backing down from what's true, because it's true and right. You know what you want to say, and say it wherever you possibly can. Otherwise, I think you talk to your unions, you lobby. There's a million ways to gain political power in larger ways. But starting in your school, just talk to people.
That's great. Thank you, Jess. And then I have one more question, and then folks in this space, I'll invite you to go back to the main room, take a 5-minute before we go ahead and close for the day. So Jess, we would love to hear, what other platforms are you on? How can folks find you?
Thank you. I had been mostly active on Twitter, and I'm still there at Jess_MC, but it's not the same kind of place anymore. So I'm regularly on the Suburban Women Problem podcast talking about these issues and other issues. I am on Instagram, also Jess_MC, where I get a little activisty over there. But I'm kind of platform shopping at the moment. I'm a little bit Blue Sky, a little bit Mastodon, but man, the demise of Twitter is really, it's a weird, tough one. But I don't even feel safe opening the app anymore, much less speaking out. So I should be on TikTok, but I'm so old. Okay, I will put the Insta in the chat.
That sounds fantastic. Well, folks, I've thoroughly appreciated you all being here, sharing space with us today. We hope that this was super beneficial to the work that you do and moving this work forward as well, and really putting our young people at the forefront and above our politics.